What's going on, peeps? Come on in. All right. What's going on, Dee? Can you hear me?
Hey, I'm here.
Hey,
I
what's
can hear
going
you
on,
loud and clear.
everybody? I'm trying to see here. Let me see. If I can see the chat. Yep, there you are. Hey, Sandra. What's going on? And there may be just a little delay. So y'all bear with us as we're going. I'm gonna try to read the chat as we go, but don't be alarmed if I'm a little late getting to you because there is a little delay. Okay. But welcome everyone to panel number, I think it's number 4. That's what I labeled it. So I hope that's right. And so tonight I just wanted to just bring it back up. Y'all know I'm just bringing up stuff all the time, but I have Dee Dee's Pharmacy here with me, and we were supposed to have another guest on the panel, but I'm not sure what's going on. She not showing up, so that's all right. But let's talk about Juneteenth, okay? So Juneteenth just passed, and for those of you that have no idea what Juneteenth means, that is June the 19th, and it was officially made a federal holiday here recently here in the United States, and so a lot of folks have mixed feelings about it. I really do have mixed feelings about it. So I just kind of wanted to bring it up and see kind of what y'all's thoughts were about it. But if you Google Juneteenth, there's a few things that come up in, everybody's rendition or story about what Juneteenth is and what it means is quite interesting. And then what it means to the Black community as a whole, and whether or not Black people are actually embracing the date, have for a long time, or just finding out about it. I think there's a mix. I know, like here in Kentucky, as a child, I've grown up in Kentucky all my life. I had no idea what Juneteenth was until a few years ago. So it is brand new to me. However, I always knew that Abraham Lincoln didn't set all the slaves free, right? And so like I've but finding this piece of history out about the delay of that news, right? Everybody didn't know that about slavery, our the fact that the emancipation was supposed to have set all the slaves free at the same time. They didn't get that news at the same time. And so after the Civil War, it just, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have computers, and all this other stuff that we have now. I would like to think that's the reason why everybody didn't get the news at the same time. However, so when you Google Juneteenth, it says it's a federal holiday in the United States commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. It is also often observed for celebrating African American culture. And I thought that piece was quite interesting, because anyway, I think they could have done without that piece. Um, Originating in Galveston, Texas, it has been celebrated annually on June 19th in various parts of the United States since 1866. And another description actually says that it's been celebrated since 1865. So I don't know. Apparently, the emancipation happened in 1862. So that means at least 2 or 3 years later, 3 years later,
1863.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
1863.
Emancipation 1863.
And then they got the news
What I say, 62?
Yeah, and then they got the news of 65 2 years later.
Okay. So thank you. And this is the historian. But the bottom line is the news got to most of the country late. And so where on the 4th of July, we celebrate our independence, right? Apparently Black people in the South celebrates their actual independence, their ancestors' independence from slavery via Juneteenth. So anyway, so the question is, did we really need the president to make Juneteenth a federal holiday? Did we really need, and what does that really mean? I mean, like what's really gonna come out of the fact that he made this Juneteenth a federal holiday? And Dee Dee, I know you have plenty of thoughts, but before we get to your thoughts, I'd ask the same question on on my Facebook page, and I just wanted to see what some of my friends would say on Facebook, right? And so I'm not going to read names at all, but there was a good mixture of different ethnicities represented here. So I just want to share some of the comments. So again, the question is, did we really need, the Black community really need the president to make Juneteenth a federal holiday? And the first person to respond to that said, need? Question mark? No. Appreciate the acknowledgement and celebration of U.S. history that is not whitewashed. Yes. Okay. So I was like, okay, I can agree with that. Several people said, girl, this is just a trick so they can capitalize and make money. I'm open to that as well. Some people said no, he did not do us any favors by making Juneteenth a federal holiday. We need land, stable businesses. We need reparations. Cut us a check. Ain't nobody caring about this federal holiday because the Black community was already celebrating it. Nope, we didn't need it. How about reparations or an anti-lynching bill?
They already had that, but how about you enforce the bills that you had? Anti-lynching, hate crimes, we have all of that, but they don't enforce it.
They don't enforce it. That's the issue. And that seems to be the issue. You know, I would like to think that if we could, now, don't get me wrong, I'm not minimizing policy change at all, okay? And most of you all know that have been following me lately know that I've been a part of some of that process here in my city in regards to urban agriculture and black farming, okay, and access to land and all that kind of thing. So, but you know, again, we always come back to whether or not these policies are being enforced, just like you just brought up, Didi. And so if we don't enforce the policy changes or the policy that's already in place that is supposed to protect the community, what's the point? What's the point? Didi said. Some other comments. No, this is just another man-made holiday. That has nothing to do with atonement and reparations, which are owed to Black people. Juneteenth cannot be truly honored if critical race topics are not discussed in classes or not taught in our educational systems. I appreciate it, but we still need justice for Breonna Taylor, which is, if y'all are not familiar with who Breonna Taylor is, it's a young lady that was shot and killed by police officers during a no-knock situation. And so basically she died for no reason here in Louisville, Kentucky. And there's justice still has not been served for that in the way that most people think that it should be. And so I'm trying to get back to her comment. I'm sorry, I lost the comments here. So we still need justice. We need to be able to teach our students about our history, the real history of America. We need to stop killing Black people. We need real police reform. And I think it's just another way to distract us from the real issues. They should make Election Day a federal holiday if they cared about Black people voting. When it comes to changes to prevent all the constant murder we see from police day in and day out, silence. As usual, the government solution for minority issues is symbolic rather than tangible policy. And this all happens while critical race theory, a simple sociological study of societal ramifications for minorities, is being banned or being discussed for banning from public schools in more than half the states in America. We suck as a nation. That was the comment. So Dee, there's several more on here, but I do want to know your thoughts about whether or not you feel like we actually, the Black community really needed Juneteenth to become a holiday. Because I don't know why. I just feel like, like everything else, this president, and not that I feel two ways about him, I'm just saying in this situation, in this context, like this really fixes something. Like I hope that he doesn't feel that way, that it really actually fixes stuff here in this country by making this a federal holiday. But what are your thoughts about it?
So first, let me say thank you for having me on.
Yeah, girl, sure. Hey, Janet.
I appreciate the invite. So my thoughts and my feelings about Juneteenth being recognized as a federal holiday under this presidency, under the Joe Biden presidency. I'm sorry, I'm trying to contain myself because every time I think about it, my race warrior just starts to rage up in me. I have so many issues with it. First of all, let me say this. Here in my city, we have always had some form of Juneteenth celebration. I remember being in middle school and, being old enough to go to the Juneteenth celebration. Like it was a weekend deal that we would have it here. Now, it was a carnival. It was all sorts of things, like that Friday night until like Sunday afternoon. But in going to the Juneteenth, festival, that's what we called it, the Juneteenth festival back in the 80s. Like, I still didn't learn what Juneteenth was. Like we had Juneteenth, but I didn't know the history of Juneteenth. And like my family, they didn't tell us about it. And they were older. They, a lot of retired people. But so we've had it here. And I participated in different festivities during Juneteenth, depending on if I was off or not. But, I do think that there has been a major breakdown among Black people because, one, we've been faced with so many different things imposed upon us by American culture, society, the government, just everything. Living here in America, we're constantly bombarded by things that are beyond our control and that we really don't want to be bothered with, but we have no choice just because of who we are in this country. So, we've lost so much because, we're constantly under attack in a sense. And so, and people can feel however they want to feel about me saying that. But, through the school system, I think that there's an intentional breakdown that started with integration, and us learning about us because other people were teaching us and they cared nothing. The vast majority of them cared nothing about us, our education, our well-being, none of that. So we started immediately losing when we started, when we no longer had Black teachers, you know what I'm saying? But instead had other people teaching us. So, and then at home, it was it's always, and people, like I said, people can feel how they want to feel about it, but I have the evidence of history, the civil rights movement, mass incarceration, just all this stuff that we've been constantly bombarded by and affected by, it's always something. And it's even to this day, there's always something going on, this voter suppression bills and everything is a fight in this country. It's like, you're overwhelmed with all of this stuff. And the only good thing that I can say about it is, well, thank God it's not just us being overwhelmed by it anymore. I mean, now everybody else is like, oh my God, so, but going back to the original question, to me, it was a straight abomination for Joe Biden to be having anything to do with anything pertaining to a Black celebration because of who he is, not who he was, but who he still is. Dementia, whatever the case may be, whatever he's suffering from, he is still Jim Crow Joe, and he will never be anything different as far as I'm concerned. He is still.
So wait a minute. A lot of people don't know about Joe Biden and this Jim Crow Joe.
You know what? Okay, so we on YouTube. All you got to do is put in your little search engine box, Joe Biden 1994 crime bill speech, and you scroll through, and the history pops right on up there. You can see him with this little funky little brown dyed hair out there on the Senate floor talking about we don't have to forgive them for creating them, and da 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 da. So you can watch and see, thank God for cameras and the recording and the video. You can see and hear him as he was petitioning both Democrats and Republicans and independents to pass this 1994 crime bill, where he was talking about they're going to rape your daughters and our mothers and our sisters and all. And the day that he was talking about was Black males, and he was calling them predators, which then Hillary Clinton stepped her little manly looking butt up and started calling Black men super predators. But it was Joe Biden who led this whole thing, who ushered in mass incarceration and locked up a whole generation of Black men and destroyed Black families like they had never seen before. Even to the point of where in the documentary 13, Newt Gingrich, and Lord knows he was a out there wild buckshot Republican, even he said that, in that documentary, you can watch it, 13, it's about the 13th Amendment and how they used that loophole from slavery and the freeing of slaves to use locking Black folks up as a way of breaking us down and breaking up our communities. And Joe Biden was one of the most successful people in destroying Black families and Black communities with that 1994 crime bill. So like I said, and he's the same Joe Biden, if you go back before, when it was talks about integration, when he was referring to Black people, talking about if we let them into our schools are going to become jungles. I'm sorry, but looking at the history of Europeans and the descendants of Europeans here in America, we're not the ones who've been acting like animals and maniacs for 400 and 500 years. I'm sorry, excuse me, somebody's at the door. Give me just 1 second.
So while she's away, let me read some more comments because I'm sure she's going to come back and keep firing away here. But let me read some more comments. So the question, if you are just joining us, just real quick, brief, we're not going to be out here long, but I wanted to ask you all specifically about Juneteenth. So we just celebrated Juneteenth. Juneteenth was just made a federal holiday. And so the question is, does the Black community really, really need this president to make Juneteenth a federal holiday? Do we really need that? And so a lot of the thoughts were no, no, we don't. We didn't need it. Appreciate the fact that he tried to acknowledge Juneteenth and what it stands for, but no, we didn't really need it. Now some people are saying yes, we need that, but we also need reparations. We need somebody to cut a check and acknowledge all this other stuff about Black history that is not being taught in schools or the educational system. We need him to. Someone even stated on here that it's a start, that Juneteenth was made a federal holiday. That this went through the Senate and the House with bipartisan support at a record pace. That very seldom happens, according to this person. This means we know how fast the 20%, the 80% of power can move when they want to. It's the beginning of acknowledgement of the true history of America. As far as how we celebrate it, that's on us. We can allow society to make it a mockery or spend the day doing things to honor what the day truly means. And so she goes on. She has quite a bit here, but some people believe that making Juneteenth a federal holiday, it was only a gimmick to capitalize on and to make lots of money, especially next year. Um, Somebody said that Congress moved fast on this as a knee-jerk reaction to the Black Lives Matter movement and COVID-related economic disruption over the last year. It is mostly a political ploy to create another summer holiday tied to capitalism with no real connection to Black liberation and reparations. Juneteenth was actually celebrated originally in Galveston, Texas, which we mentioned before, to commemorate when the enslaved were told 2.5 years later, after the fact that they were free. And the states of Kentucky and Rhode Island continued to use slaves even after that, officially freeing their slaves in December of 1865, when the 13th Amendment became law, according to this comment. So Didi was going to continue. She got interrupted there, but please continue with your thoughts on whether or not Juneteenth should have been made a federal holiday or not. Or did we need it?
So, okay, I'm sorry. And I'm actually kind of glad for the interruption because, again, it gave me the opportunity to kind of bring it down some because, Joe Biden just really sickens me. Like, he sickens me to the pit of my soul. He sickens me. And because he's not about fixing anything. I remember 5 years ago when he was still defending the 1994 crime bill and what it did. It wasn't until like the last 7-8 months where he finally said, well, it was a mistake, and even in admitting that it was a mistake, now, because you're running for presidency, but even admitting that, what have you done to repair anything? You haven't done anything to fix anything. So, just like when he took his unnecessary self being, his little mediocre self down to Tulsa to acknowledge the 1921 Tulsa massacre, without reparations to those people. So who needs you to show up and say, well, this happened? Well, we know it happened because we're still living with the consequences. We're living with the consequences of all of it. So you don't have to tell us that it happened, and you acknowledging it, that's the first step. But if you think that's the only step, then, why bother? Why bother? But going back to it, for Black people, Black American people, not just Black people, because lots of people are passing themselves off as a Black person because they got melanin. Don't get me started on that VP lady. But excuse me. But for Black Americans, for non-immigrant Black people, for foundational Black Americans, for the descendants of American slavery, for those people who have been here, who are rooted in the slavery, the emancipation, Reconstruction, forced sharecropping, mass incarceration, who have been here, who did not voluntarily come here. Those people who did not voluntarily come here, who have a citizenship that cannot be revoked, okay? To those people, it is a good thing because so many of those people who should be celebrating it don't know anything about it. And so for the first time, some of them are probably hearing anything about a Juneteenth, which is a shame in itself that this is the first time that they're hearing about it. And some people, unless somebody who doesn't look like them tells them something, then they're dismissive of what people who look like them say. So for only in those two minute circumstances is it a good thing that it was acknowledged by a sitting president. Outside of that, there's so many problems with it. One, like I said, he should have never been the person to do it. Just because of who he is, what he was to Black people, and how he's still behaving badly towards Black people. I don't care what you admit. A bully will say, yeah, I bopped him upside the head. But what you gonna do about it? And when you do nothing, basically that's what you're saying to the people. Yeah, we did that. So what? So he was the wrong person. The second thing, yeah, we don't need you because we've been celebrating how we've been celebrating. The other thing is that I have an issue with. Okay, so let me not say I have an issue. Let me not start from that aspect of it. I love people, right? In general, just humanity, because there's some real beauty in humanity, right? But my heart beats for us, the diaspora, but especially us here in America. I understand the beauty of us and what has come out of us. Only Black folks will say, well, yeah, we've been enslaved. But, and yeah, they knew, but they didn't tell us, and they kept us working 2.5 years after the fact. Yeah, they've done this stuff to us, but let us still kind of celebrate because at least we're not, officially locked under anymore, by law to a degree. And so, we will find some reason to be joyful and to celebrate and to come together and share a moment of love with each other. I love that. That is something that we do very well. Decoration Day, which is now Memorial Day, is pretty much the same thing. It was something that was started by us, us, rooted in slavery. And but the thing that happens to every idea that has been plundered from us, every celebration that has been, recognized by non-Black American people who didn't spring up out of slavery, Jim Crow, Reconstruction, who didn't spring up out of those that survived the most horrific events by some of the most awful people the world has ever known, is that when other people get involved, well, you need to make me comfortable with it because I want to be a part of this. So then in making them comfortable with it, right, and letting them chime in their ideas, it then changes. And Black people have this way of saying, like they said, jazz was dead. And hip hop is dead, rap is dead. We go through these things and then you'll hear this grumbling about this is dead. And what it is Black people are saying, you all have come into this thing and you've turned it around to where it's not what it originally was. And now it is not that thing, that beautiful thing that everybody wanted to be a part of. And so that is dead because of you all. And so when I say I have an issue, and I had to go back and say about the beauty of it first, this is the issue I have. When something gets recognized Now all of a sudden you have people that want to jump on board, right? And then we're going to celebrate multiculturalism. Well, this wasn't that. This was something that was unique and specific to us, about us, something that we did for our own well-being, our own acknowledgement of what we went through. Not what you went through, not what you went through or what happened someplace else, but this was unique to us. Like last year, I was so put off when on Twitter, there was a Haitian person. Now, I celebrate, my heart got full when I learned about the 1804 Haitian Revolution. But never in a million years would I ever think, being a Black American, to start a GoFundMe, for myself, when they start celebrating the 1804 Haitian Revolution. You know how foul and out of line that is? So already, just yesterday, I saw an article, because I stayed reading. I saw an article and about some Mexican Americans who once Juneteenth, when they realized, and they said this in this article, about once they realized that, when President Joe Biden, acknowledged Juneteenth and the slavery and all this, that, and the other, then it caused them to look into their roots, which is a good thing. And then they realized, that they were Black Seminoles and that whole legacy. Now, but they left like around 1822, which is way before the Civil War. Now, I'm not saying who can and cannot celebrate anything. You can celebrate whatever you want to celebrate, right? But again, when I think about how things have gotten twisted when other people get involved, right? One of the first things that I said to myself is, how are white people going to celebrate Juneteenth? Like outside of coming to whatever events that Black people are putting together for it, or whatever events they decide to put together themselves, which is weird to me. But what are they celebrating exactly? I mean, have BearFruit, have you ever thought about that? Or anybody else out there that is Black, that is a Black American, okay? For the life of me, I can't understand what it is that they would be celebrating. Like, what would they be celebrating? Because we were enslaved by white people. Like, what would they be celebrating? And are they celebrating, like, it's just one of those things, because the entire history of America, which is run by white Americans, wherever they, descended from, pretty much, yeah, you got a few Black folks, but a lot of them, you'd be surprised at how many grassroots Black folks would trade in these Black leaders and politicians if we had other options, but what could they possibly be celebrating? The history here has been so bad. Like there's not a promise that America has kept to anybody that, is not white or identifies as white or is classified as white. Like you look, they still messing around with the Native Americans, land is sovereign, depending on who's sitting in the White House. Land ain't sovereign. They don't have sovereignty. I mean, it just depends. And okay, well, we're going to leave you right there, but we're going to go just up the river a little ways, and we're going to release genetically modified fish into your waterways. And it's the same thing with Black folks. They have not kept a single promise to us. They have not, and it's not just white people. Even Barack Obama. And oh my God, I almost hate thinking about him, because I hate that I voted for him, not once, but twice, because I was under the delusion, that this dude was actually going to do something, but I didn't fully understand. I knew he was half African, like from by way of Kenya, and I knew he was white, but I didn't understand how he was rooted in whiteness and what that meant for Black Americans. Until, I'm like, listen.
Y'all, did y'all hear what she said?
I'm just saying.
Blasphemy.
Listen, and if people, if they want to get mad at me for how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking based off the information and the evidence of history and all this documentation, which is evidence, and you want to get mad at me, you know what I'm saying, then you need to go see a psychiatrist, because I ain't the problem. The history that people are creating is the problem. But, you know, again, you know, like Barack Obama, you know, this dude, anyway, Joe Biden shouldn't have been the one. And these people who are not rooted in us, I don't know what they're celebrating. You got Obama talking about the Statue of Liberty was for immigrants. Well, no, it wasn't. You know, you got Obama talking about he don't believe in you know, marriage being between, you know, anything outside of a man and a woman. But then he does, you know, he writes over 50 plus pieces of legislation for that. Then you got him saying, well, he don't believe in reparations for Black people, Black American people. But then his last month in office in December 2016, he goes and gives reparations to the residents of Guam for the atrocities committed to them by the Japanese. You know, and this dude is still talking, you know, and it's just like, what are they celebrating? Like I said, it's not just white people, but what are non-Black Americans celebrating? What are you celebrating?
So someone in the comments, real quick. Yeah, real quick. Somebody in the comments said, you keep asking that question, what are white people celebrating? I don't know, because I'm not white, so I can't answer for them. But this person said it would be the same as everybody going to African festivals, just enjoying the activities. They just want to be immersed in the culture, you know, and that energy. And I get it. I mean, whatever. But I don't know. So somebody commented that.
Again, well, so with that being said, then that's not a celebration. That's you just showing up to be a bystander. You know what I'm saying?
So you don't think white people can truly celebrate Black culture?
Listen, I guess maybe we need to understand celebrate. Because to me, so like you can go to a party and have a good time, right? Are you celebrating anything at the party? No, you know, you have to get together, you're not celebrating, you just get together, right? Have a good time. And you do whatever festivities there to be done. But when you have a celebration, you are recognizing, right, something special, something in particular, right? Like when somebody graduates, you have a graduation celebration, right? You are honoring that person. And so for me, you know, so when you celebrate somebody's life, somebody's achievement, some accomplishment, right? Some culture, you are honoring it. So when I say, what are white people celebrating? How are you all honoring us? When I look at the day-to-day behavior, year after year, of those that classify themselves as white here in America, they ain't honoring nothing, least of all us.
Are you saying all? Are you saying some? Are you saying all or some?
Here's what I'm saying. When I go to fill out an application, when you go to do the U.S. Census, they don't sit up there and divide themselves up according to French American and tell you whether they identify that. They say, well, I'm French American, right? Or I'm German American. I'm, you know, Dutch or whatever the case may be. You see white on there with no other breakdowns, just white. At least with us, you see Black African American, because at first we were African American, and then they were like, well, you know, immigrants that came here, they were like, no, we are African and American. So now we just Black. You see, so there is some kind of, you know, acknowledgement that we're not a monolith, you know. But when I say white people or white American, whomever classifies themselves as white, what are you celebrating? What are you honoring? Now, yes, I absolutely know.
Yes. Someone else says, I understand what you mean. It's kind of like cultural appropriation. Celebrate, but know why you are celebrating.
Well, again, when I say so, and it's not just about cultural appropriation, because sometimes people can come and be a bystander, They can come and kind of participate in festivities, right? And not necessarily appropriating anything. But when you say, for instance, when I say that, here in my city, we have what's called an ethnic festival. It was started by Black men over 30 plus years ago. And it was to celebrate different ethnicities. I went 3 years ago. No, I went in 2019. And, there's African booths, there's the German booth, there's the Samoa booth, there's all these different countries that are represented, right? It's a 3-day thing where they have food, they're selling items that are indicative of their culture. There's performances that's going on, right? So that's a whole thing about, culture, right? From different ethnicities. Now, I went back in 2019 and I go to the booth for Kenya because there's something there that I like to buy, okay? It's a drink there that they sell at this booth every year. And that booth has always been run by Kenyans. I go to the booth in 2019 and I stand there for a second. And I do this, I got a whole little look and demeanor, disposition about myself. So my sister says to me, she snaps me out of it. She goes, "What's wrong? What are you looking at?" And I'm like, "Look at this booth." And I'm looking, so she looks over at the booth and she's like, "What?" And then she says, "Wait, is that a white lady in the booth?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "But she's not just white. Look what she's wearing." The Kenyan booth did not have not a single Kenyan person in the booth. The booth was being spearheaded and run by a white lady wearing a dashiki. Then there was there was a white girl, a white guy, they're wearing dashikis. Then there was a biracial girl who was in there and she just had on plain clothes. Again, not from Kenya, not even African, not even Black. But white people are running the Kenyan booth, is decorated out in Kenyan fashion and they wearing dashikis. That's cultural appropriation. And if I wouldn't have been mad at somebody who was Kenyan, I would have went all up and through there in that booth and made a big stink about it. Because my sister was like, "Please don't make a stink." I said, "I'm not gonna make a stink." Because right now I'm kind of having a fight with somebody that's Kenyan, But on any other day, now that's cultural appropriation. That one, they ain't got no business wearing no dashikis. Now people will say, "Well, you can't tell people what they can and cannot wear." This is an ethnic festival celebrating different ethnicities. They are not from Kenya. I don't give a crap that they was born there. If white Americans can sit up here and tell people who are from South America that you ain't American and you can't come here, you mean to tell me it's okay for a white person to be pretending to be Kenyan so they can sell some stuff and wear dashikis? Never mind. Let me go a step further. If you were to walk up to a French booth where they're selling crepes and everybody in there was as Black as a Sudanese and they were Mandinka and they were like, "Well, we're French," you'd be like, "No, you don't look anything like Napoleon." I mean, I'm just saying that's cultural appropriation. When I say celebrate, I'm talking about honor. To me, what good is it for white Americans, America, the country, right, government, whomever, to say we're going to celebrate Juneteenth, and every single day, day in, day out, the law attacks us, the police attack us, our government has been attacking us, right? Starting with them taking really, we go back to the emancipation. Lincoln said he didn't really want to free the slaves. If he can keep slavery going, he would. But it was stifling the economy up in the North. So our government has always been dead set against us. And you mean to tell me you're gonna start celebrating us on one day in Juneteenth? But you're gonna keep persecuting us day in and day out? I mean, and I'm sure if I was to look up someplace in this country on Juneteenth, there's a good chance that some Black person who is a non-immigrant is probably been persecuted somewhere in this country. So again, how you gonna honor us when your exo stank 364 days out the year for the last however many hundreds of years and counting? How are you going to honor us? Are you going to give us our reparations? Are you going to do like James Baldwin said back in the 60s? And when he said, "Just leave us alone," we we cannot be left alone. So you're gonna honor me on Juneteenth? You're gonna honor Juneteenth? How? So my question stands. I would like to know from any non-Black American person, how are you going to celebrate as in honor Juneteenth? What changes are you making? What are you fighting for?
And there are people in the chat that agree with you. So what change is going to be made after, this holiday has been made official holiday? Literally, somebody just typed that the holiday will not help until real change happens. And then somebody said Black Lives Matter satisfied some of us and made the other ones mad as hell. So where is the balance here? What do we do? Do we be mad about the holiday being made a federal holiday, or do we use that to fuel a movement of change? That's a great point. And there are different perspectives. Somebody else typed, there's just so many different mentalities, perspectives on backgrounds. We can go on and on. And I agree with that. There are pros and cons, I think, of the holiday being made a federal holiday. I'm not gonna lose sleep over this, right? I kind of let it go a couple of days ago. I was just like, Lord Jesus, help us. But I pray that the people just understand that this is not helping anything unless he says we're gonna cut a check now and it'd be the biggest payout in history to Black people.
Well,
maybe
if I may say something.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I am all for reparations because it is owed to us, right? It's necessary.
Definitely.
And it is owed to us. But here's the other thing. It can't just be just about the money.
It can't be, and reparations to me isn't just money. I don't feel like
no, I'm not saying you.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is
my perspective. Like I don't necessarily think it's just money.
Sure,
but go ahead.
But it also has to be about there has to be a mentality. If you think back to just earlier this year, right? There was a big movement that was being launched. And so six women of Asian descent and 2 white guys was killed by a white young man, right? Who was having a bad day. Then all of a sudden, everywhere, I started noticing a Stop the Asian Hate movement. And then I started noticing that it was all over Black channels or channels that, cater to Black interest. Stop the Asian Hate. I'm trying to watch the Mahalia Jackson story, and I keep seeing every commercial is Stop the Asian Hate. And I'm like, wait a minute, it wasn't a Black person who went and killed those people. Like Black people get, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody, discrimination is real, right? Then next thing you know, and a lot of Black people still they're not even aware of it. There was legislation that was passed for them because of that one incident. Now, most of the other incidents that I saw advertised on TV was like, or even on social media, was like a fight on the subway. And when the TV showed the fight, it was a short clip of a Black man, beating up this Asian guy. But on social media, there was people who was recording from their cell phone. They said, well, he called him the N-word, so that's what come on the bus, got involved. Then the one guy turned his camera around when he said that, and I didn't know if he was Asian or Hispanic, but he wasn't Black, and he said, well, he called him the N-word. I'm like, now why didn't they show that on the news? And so after seeing this push, like it was us that they would stop the Asian hate. But either way, there was legislation that was passed for them. There was a whole Asian hate crime bill. And I'm like, why do they get a separate hate crime? There's already legislation against hate crimes. Now, if we all the same, then they falls underneath that, right? But not just that, they also got $50 million. So you tuck money into that too, with their bill. And guess what? Bipartisan, nobody said nothing. It wasn't no debate, no thinking about it. It was just done. You see what I'm saying? It was immediate, with the news media, television, advertisement, billboards, stop the Asian hate. Then there was legislation. And now people know, and they prosecute. Well, I see them prosecuting Black folks, fight at a beauty shop, or a nail salon. They prosecute Black people. A fight at a beauty supply store, they prosecute Black people, and it's falling under hate crimes. So now, if you know how to do it for other people, why don't you know how to do it for us? Yeah, give us that money, but also give us the protections. Again, my question is how are you going to celebrate Juneteenth? How are you going to honor Black people when there's been anti-hate crimes, anti-lynching bills, and all of that since forever. We've been talking about immediately after freeing the slaves, they were talking about reparations. And so some people got it, just a few people out there in South Carolina, but then they took that stuff back. The very next president, that old lush Andrew Johnson, who showed up drunk on his inauguration day, he took the stuff back, and then they've been telling us all this time, but too much time has passed. Now they're saying, well, we didn't own any slaves. No, but all the wealth that has been passed down to you has been passed down from slavery. So, you sitting on some stolen merchandise as far as I'm concerned. So, but you're going to go to a Juneteenth celebration and do what? So
let me read some of the comments.
And what else?
Yep. Let me read some of the comments from the chat. And they're in agreement with you, and then some have other opinions, but someone said there will never be equality as long as there is a continued oppression of common people by the large corporations running this country. Hate for any race is bad. Media is a whole nother discussion, and I agree. Yes, media does paint a picture that is their own, and there's politics attached to all of this. We need to be aware of when social justice causes are being used to sway votes and dollars, and we know that. We definitely know that. Someone said progress is progress. Progress is better than staying still. And I can agree with, a win is a win. I mean, some things, it may be a small win or may not be what we want, but it is a win. My only reservation is, or in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about what is the motivation for why something has, this progress has happened. Right. So what is the motivation for Juneteenth to be making a federal holiday? I'm not completely 100% bought in to the fact that it's just because, it was time, or or what's that?
Do you remember back in the 90s, the mid 90s, when this America was pushing to recognize and celebrate Kwanzaa? This is kind of what this feels like to me. Okay, the Black people are celebrating something. We need to get in on this and make some money.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like that. And then it also kind of feels like this whole thing of like Obama about the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty wasn't about freeing the slaves. It was for immigrants. No, sir. No, it was not. No, sir. No, it was not. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what this also feels like to me. If you're going to make Juneteenth a federal holiday, why haven't you made Cinco de Mayo a federal holiday?
Somebody had brought that up yesterday, and I was like, what?
People celebrate that.
Right. Now it's on the calendars, right? It's on the calendars, but it is not a federal holiday.
But you see, and then, like I said, just knowing the history of America, it's like anything that Black people are doing, anytime other people attach themselves to it, they end up attaching another movement. Like I learned about a red hair singer, Holly or Karen or somebody from the 60s. And, when the civil rights movement was going on, there was two other movements that attached itself because they were all for civil rights. And then it became about women's rights. And then LGBT, lesbian and gay rights. And so, like I said, every time there's something going on with Black people, We celebrate Decoration Day. Well, then we're going to go ahead and take it and turn it into Memorial Day. The federal government is going to acknowledge it as Memorial Day. In fact, there was just an incident about this. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Bernard Kemp, and you can look it up. He, retired military personnel, and he's giving a speech at one of these American Legion posts, and he goes into talking about the history and how one of the earliest recorded celebrations of Decoration Day or Memorial Day was Decoration Day, and how freed Blacks, newly freed Black people, how they celebrated, and how they treated and honored the dead, because, those white Union soldiers just burned out and said, we don't care nothing about those bodies. And Black folks, free Black folks, took the time to bury those people. And they had a whole parade and celebration honoring the sacrifices that these people made. And, and so they cut his microphone out for more than 2 minutes while this white retired lieutenant colonel was giving his speech, and he was talking about Black folks. They cut his microphone off because they was like, well, this don't fit into our idea of the celebration. And I'm like, well, then how can you, and my thought was, how can you celebrate Memorial Day if you don't understand that this was started by Black people who were newly freed? How can you gonna disrespect this white guy who's a part of this American Legion and the military, because he's telling y'all that this holiday and this tradition of celebrating those who sacrificed their lives in the war for cause, you gonna cut his microphone off and disrespect them. So, I'm like, again, how they gonna celebrate when they behave like this all the time? And you had mentioned progress, and as soon as that's one of those words I almost hate. Like, I was taught to not say you hate something, just say I dislike it, I strongly dislike. But no, that word is one of those words that I just almost hate, because immediately, as soon as you said that word about somebody in the chat about progress, my mind immediately went to Malcolm X when he says, if a man has a knife 6 inches in his back, he has a knife in his back, and you pull it out a couple of inches, well, that's progress, but the knife is still there. So is it really progress? And I kind of feel like that, with all of this. He acknowledged us. So that's progress. Well, the devil acknowledges Christians, quote unquote. Yeah, oh, you're a Christian. So what good does that do you? Well, guess what? Not much. Because now he's like, okay, I'm coming for you. I'm coming to take everything you got. And I truly feel like, well, anytime the American government, American people that are non-Black people, when they acknowledge something about us, well, it's to take over, to take away from, or to make a sales event out of it. They corrupt it in some form or fashion. So again, I'm going back to, well, how are you going to celebrate us? How are you going to celebrate that event? You just going to show up and just say, hey, well, they're doing something, so I'm going down there and have me a good time.
Yep. Well, somebody said in the chat, you know what, it's just time out for celebrating days, and we just need to create change. Quit creating days, quit celebrating days, because that's not really helping us at all. Someone also said that let me find it. Cinco de Mayo was not actually created for Mexican people, though. And so really? I'm interested to learn more about that personally myself, because I don't know a lot about it. But and so we might actually do that on this channel, because I would love to hear more perspectives about, and yeah,
it is like a bunch of nonsense to me.
Yeah, it just yeah. I just let's see. There was one more comment.
And it's so funny. I would love to talk to the person in the chat who said it wasn't created for Mexican people. And because I'm like thinking to myself, as soon as you hear it, you're like, okay, well, I know Cinco, and De Mayo, those are Spanish words.
But I feel like, I mean, just not knowing anything about it. I mean, how many times have our culture been exploited as well? to create a big fuss. So, you know, I could understand and how it could at least feel that way.
Yeah, and it's
And
like I don't, things that I don't understand or know anything about, I don't celebrate. Like one of the things that just absolutely drives me crazy, and my mother does this. She fixes corned beef and cabbage for St. Patrick's Day. And I'm like, we ain't got a lick of Irish blood in us. Why are you doing that? Are people going there to the St. Patrick's? Well, it is something to do. But I'm like, that don't have nothing to do with you. But, you go ahead and go. And because people ask me all the time. And the part that really gets me is, I'm like, I don't look good in green. I ain't never really wore no green. I ain't buy no green. And you better not put your hands on me, because otherwise you're going to have to fight on your hands. I like, they just try to, people try to force people into stuff. And I kind of feel like that's another part of this, is they're trying to force non-Black people into this get on board, we're all one and the same, when clearly we're not all one and the same.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna wrap up with this, and this has always been something that I go through every year almost, because I can't forget it. When I was in the 8th grade, I was in social studies class, and my social studies teacher, we had just come back from Martin Luther King Day, or come back after, it was the day after that. And he wanted, I grew up in a predominantly white city, and it was rural as well. And there was myself and another Black girl in the class. We're the only 2 Blacks in the class. And he looked at me and then looked at her and made the comment, well, I was sitting outside my home and doing some yard work, and my neighbors next door were in their swing on the porch, and they were talking amongst themselves, and they brought up Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And one of my neighbors said, oh, did you realize today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day? The other neighbor said, no, I didn't realize that. But that's why everybody's at home today. And the other neighbor said, well, yep, that's why everybody's home. Maybe if we kill another one, we can have another day off of work and be home as well. And my social studies teacher, after telling that story, looked at me and, how does that make you feel? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, can you just tell the class on behalf of Black people how that makes you feel? And I looked at him and I said, sir, I'm not a spokesman for Black people, but I'm not sure how to feel about it. I've been Black all my life. I've been threatened by white people. So to me, it doesn't really, I don't feel any kind of way. It's kind of, I mean, I don't know what to, I don't know what to hear, And he looked at me and said, are you serious? It doesn't make you mad? And I just looked at him because I just didn't know what else to say. But in my mind, I was thinking, if I got mad every time a white person said, or somebody that was prejudiced or didn't like Black people, or didn't like me because I was Black, said something to me because of the color of my skin, I would not be able to live in this life. I just don't have time to fool with it. So, somebody said, good night. Yes, you are right. Good night. So when Juneteenth was made a federal holiday, that's the first thing that came to my head. I was an 8th grader, and this is happening again. But I did, and I don't want to get on here, and I'm not speaking on behalf of Black people. This is just my perspective, my opinion. I wanted to bring this to the table and see what others thought. And so thank you all so much for joining me tonight. And Dee Dee, thank you so much for sharing your perspective as well. And it is your perspective. It's my perspective. There are a lot of comments about what we're talking about tonight. Thank you all for being in the chat and being open to just being a part of the discussion. But y'all, we're not speaking on behalf of any race, or ethnicity. It's just we come in and talking about what we're talking about. Okay, so I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for joining us, and we're gonna wrap it up, y'all, because to be honest, I'm about to fall over.
Barefoot, can I say
Baby,
something real quick?
right, yeah, this baby got me off my sleep schedule. But Dee Dee, yeah, if you have any last words, go for it, and then we're gonna wrap it up for the night.
So I want to say thank you so much for having this discussion. I want to say thank you to people in the chat for, if you thought about, if there's something I made you, if something I said made you think, be it, you're mad, you're in agreement or otherwise, thank you for thinking about it. Just thank you for thinking about it. Because, so many times when I talk, especially, and this is when I talk to Black people, African people, whomever I'm talking to, a lot of times I've been hearing this all my life. I never thought about it that way. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what you been thinking? How you been thinking about it? And then I just kind of have settled into this whole thing of, well, at least, instead of me getting frustrated at people not thinking about it, at least now they're thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that's one of the first steps into actually, in fact, that is a step, is acknowledgement. At least now, I done made you think about something outside of the way you normally think about it. You know what I'm saying? We're all different and we have different perspectives and feelings and thoughts about it. And then also my last thing that I want to say is I'm curious. I'm still curious about how white people are going to celebrate Juneteenth. I'm curious as to how Caribbean Americans are going to celebrate Juneteenth. I'm curious as to how Africans are going to celebrate Juneteenth. People from Europe, I saw BBC talking about celebrating Juneteenth, and I'm curious as to how people are celebrating and why are they celebrating. But whatever your reason, whatever.
Well, maybe we can have some people, hopefully, that watch the video all the way through the replay. Comment in the comment section, and or maybe we can host another panel and get some reactions from folks that are not of African descent or descent of the enslaved people, our ancestors, and ask them, because I don't know. So, but thank you so much, Dee Dee. And thank you all so much for joining us. Until next time, y'all know we'll be back together next time. I love y'all. And we'll holler at y'all later.